Good evening and welcome to the Milford Board of Selectmen meeting for August 20th, 2018. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast by Milford Media. First agenda item is the signing of the warrant,
I'll make a motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
and I will vote in the affirmative as well. The next agenda item is the approval of the minutes from August 2nd, 2018,
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
I'll second it.
and I will vote affirmative as well. Next agenda item is invitation to speak. Is anybody?
Mr. Chairman, we did have another set of minutes I just would like to get approved. July 30th.
Oh, sorry, July
We had a very
30th.
brief meeting, I think, on August 2nd.
We did.
So July 30th also, if we could get a vote.
I'll move to approve those, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll second that.
And I will vote in the affirmative as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for that. Sorry, it got by me.
That's okay.
Next agenda item is invitation to speak. Anybody here for invitation to speak? There are no public hearings tonight. Next agenda item is scheduled appointments. First one is Milford Pancakes, a common viticular license. Come on right up. Right there with the mic.
Right here, first one.
Okay. All right.
You can sit down, sir.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Get comfortable.
Get comfortable.
And you are?
My name is Andrew Gaudreau,
And you're
and I'm representing IHOP, Mr. Stacks Incorporated.
And explain to the general public, you're taking over the
The Friendlies.
old Friendlies on 109.
That's right, on 109. And we are planning to open on December 6th. And our hours of operation are Thursday. Our hours of operation are Sunday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., and Friday and Saturday, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m.
And you and I spoke earlier,
Right.
just so the public knows, how many restaurants you have around the country, not just Massachusetts.
Around the country is right now, roughly, we have 65 to 70 from here to California.
And your company is based out of California.
Yes, based
You're
out of California.
You're based out of Massachusetts.
That's correct.
Who will be the person responsible for the restaurant in the Milford location?
As in the general manager?
Yes.
Or the general manager at the moment is unknown. However, the vice president of the East Coast currently is Sal Morales.
Okay. And for the general public, department head review form, building commissioner, no change, town planner, no change, tax collector, no outstanding taxes, town treasurer, none, fire chief sees no problems, police chief, no issues. So everything looks good. Gentlemen?
Thank you,
comment?
Mr. Chairman. I just noticed that the hours of operation is indicated on the application is different than what gentleman has represented, so I just want to be clear. The application that was submitted, and this isn't a problem, I just want to be clear.
Understood.
Should we approve and what we vote on has a bearing on that. The request in the application indicated Monday through Sunday, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. And you've indicated something different, so I want to make sure it's appropriately noted for the minutes.
Understood. So the only difference is Friday and Saturday would be 12 p.m. Well, yeah, 12 a.m.
Yep,
That's right.
midnight, yep.
Midnight.
So your actual request is Sunday through Thursday, 6 a.m.
10 p.m.
to 10 p.m.,
Correct.
and Friday and Saturday, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m.
That's correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
And no problem. I just want to make sure we get it clear for the minutes. It's different, and I wanted to be clear. Yeah, so, this is inherently a good thing as we see one business close, another one takes the opportunity to make a go of it. And so, we're excited about that. We're excited about, frankly, somebody who has enough experience The only suggestion I have is, when you get into the 12 a.m. openings, my recommendation, when the general manager is assigned, the general manager meet with the police chief, get to know the local establishment, the police and public safety folks, and go over challenges that may exist uniquely to this area or to businesses. That's number one. And number two, I would let the town administrator know who the contact person is when the general manager is identified.
Absolutely, it's a great suggestion, thank you.
Just those two suggestions, because we're finding that, the businesses that know the police chief and know the unique challenges and ways in which to prevent issues, you're not new to this, and the business isn't new to this. Those businesses that are open till 12 may have folks that have been drinking prior to going into the establishment, and
Absolutely.
whatever it is that the police chief might suggest.
Right.
He's had that experience with other businesses that are similar in nature. I don't have any questions. There's certainly the experience with the corporation nationwide. It's a positive thing.
Sir,
I can only wish you luck. You're looking for a common vitular, and you're also looking for approval for a music system. That does not include live entertainment, but I'm guessing it's some kind of
yes,
a receiver and speakers
yes,
that you'd see at a
exactly.
Denny's or similar location.
yes, in most restaurants.
All right. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Will?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, with Bill's comments, I think he covered everything. Good luck, welcome.
Thank you very much. We're excited to be here.
All right, we're just going to probably vote unless
Yep.
the chairman has any questions.
I don't?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the application for a new license, common vitular, also as indicated on the application, a music system for Milford Pancakes Milford Pancakes, Inc., 17 Medway Road, Milford, Mass., with hours of operation Sunday through Thursday, 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., Friday and Saturday, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m.
And I'll gladly second that.
And I would vote unanimous as well, and welcome to the town.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Good
Have a
luck.
good night, take care.
We're excited.
Lots of luck.
Thank you so much. Good luck, guys. Good luck.
Next scheduled hearing is Attorney Joe Antonellis and self-service gas stations. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Attorney.
Nice to be here again. For the record, Joseph Antonellis. Tonight I'm here on behalf of Volta Oil, which is the company that is developing the parcel on Cedar Street. I think you see the activity going on. Volta Oil is located in Plymouth, Massachusetts, family-run organization. They have service stations primarily in the southeastern part of Massachusetts, but they've expanded up this way. The closest facility that they have is the Rapid Refill that's located at the intersection of Route 140 and Maple Street in Bellingham, just prior to the Franklin line. It's a very big store with a car wash. The facility here in Milford does not have a car wash, but will have a significant convenience store with a Dunkin' Donuts in it, just to give you an idea of where we start. My client has spoken with other gas station owners in the town of Milford who have expressed an interest in petitioning the town relative to a zoning bylaw change that would allow for self-service stations. The proposed article is very simple. What we seek to do is simply to add self-service gas stations as an allowed use, subject to a special permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals and site plan review, which is the exact process that a gas station goes through now, whether it be self-service or not. This bylaw would certainly not prohibit anyone from converting an existing station, but they would have to go through the special permit process at the Zoning Board of Appeals and then check the site plan application with the planning board, because any change of use in the town of Milford requires you going to site plan. So there are some inherent controls built in to your process here in Milford. I did take the time to speak with Chief Tui at the recommendation of the board, because as you know, the self-service regulations are strictly controlled by the State Fire Marshal's office, and therefore any and all of the specifications related to the delivery of gas in the pumps and how it's pumped will be subject to the fire chief's review. We had a very pleasant conversation, and it's my understanding after that conversation that he has no issue with the development of self-service gas stations in Milford and feels that the code of regulations are sufficient to guarantee the safety of individuals. At the suggestion of the board, because as you know, we submitted a request to come before you a couple of months ago, but due to your schedule, the summer schedule and your personnel interviews, we weren't able to make those meetings. But I did receive some suggestions through the town administrator that I know originated from the board, and I reached out to the Commission on Disabilities and forwarded a copy of a letter to them indicating that we would be going forward with this article. And in that letter I include, I think I sent a copy to Rick. In that letter I included a copy of the state regulations that talk about how the station has to be manned and the types of apparatus that are necessary so that a person who might be handicapped, elderly, or otherwise not disposed to pumping their own gas can reach the attendant inside and receive service. I didn't incorporate this in the bylaw, but I can tell you that as a matter of fact, my client does not add an additional charge for full service. Many stations do. They do not. They do not have a separate self-service island. This, what happens at the zoning board, it obviously could control that, but Peter Garrett, who is my client, said, you can simply tell the board that on my permit, if they put that as a stipulation, I'll accept it because I do it anyway. So he does not have a separate charge for that. I know this has been a issue in the past. Today I did receive a call from Dino De Bartolomeus, who's told me that I could represent to you that we spoke. He's going to make certain that I'm invited to the next commission meeting. He told me that he did not have a general objection to it, but they would like, he believes that the commission should be involved in the processing of this. So with that stated, I'm going to ask that you would submit the article I'll give you copies of it in a second. I apologize for not delivering it to you, Rick. I just forgot. And that you submit it off to the planning board so they can conduct the requisite public hearings. So I made multiple copies, if I may. And again, it's just simple. You know what your zoning bylaw looks like, and it's just a table of uses. You would add self-service stations to that. The A is a special permit from the zoning board, not the planning board. And that's because there's separate functions. As I said, the footnote 1, it means it's subject to site plan review. That's the same footnote that's in the bylaw for any use that requires site plan review, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Joe, thanks for presenting this. This has been a reoccurring theme, and I think I remember it coming up about, I'm going to guess, 20 years ago.
A long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. And if I recall, it wasn't boards and committees that specifically had concerns with it. As I recall the discussion, it was individuals who had concerns about how the elderly and how those that are disabled who might otherwise not be capable or want to pump their gas would get service. Since then, we've evolved 20 years, or whatever the time frame is. I may have the dates wrong or the years wrong. But I think that primary concern would still exist within town meeting. Many of us are familiar with self-service gas stations. Milford chose to be unique among many communities, but consistent with some other communities.
Correct. And states.
Yeah, and states that don't have self-service gas. So one of the things I'd like to understand, and I have no problem remitting to the planning board for their disposition and having the discussion as appropriate at a town meeting, our legislative body. I guess the part I'm trying to understand is how have the laws evolved? Because frankly, the big brand gas stations, when we last discussed it, had not come in with these combined mini marts and Dunkin' Donuts or these other services. And I think the concern is that for some, the people that need full-service attention are going to be competing with all of the other activities that are going on in the store. And so I'm wondering what's evolved in the law since then and how the stations have to be manned so that somebody can break away from their duties at a cash register and make sure that the service, or do they need to break it? How many people do they need to have?
It's an excellent question, and it's part of what's been codified. The systems now require that there be television monitors, and there's basically a command center inside the store. And if there's not a store, then there's a command center inside a booth where there is an attendant. And every one of the pumps is visible to the attendant, and that is required under state law, under the Code of Regulations. Again, this is the area that Chief Tui is very familiar with. And so any one attendant will have the opportunity to see what's going on at each pump. And if there's a person who can't pump their own gas, his or her own gas, then there is a call button on the pumps. And if that person can't get out and reach the call button, there's usually a sign. In fact, my client has signs to blow the horn. Okay, now, in any facility that is 1,000 square feet of retail or a store, in anything, there must at all times be 2 attendants in that facility. One for the purpose of waiting on customers, and one to serve as the go-between person between the pumps and the people buying sundries, goods, food and beverages inside the facility. So you would look at it that in a store of 1,000 square feet or more, there would in fact be 2 people at all times. That's required under the code. Now, when you go under 1,000 square feet, that relaxes, to be honest, okay? And so a smaller facility would only have to have 1 employee in there, and that person at that point is going to have to make a decision what he or she does. And so it's difficult for me to speak about how it relates to other facilities, because I know my clients is going to be over 1,000. But the bylaw as written doesn't say that, and I don't know if that's part of the thing that we'll have to develop as we go forward. But it is all in the codes relative to the monitoring. So in addition to the television monitors, there are other types of monitors for safety purposes inside the gas station, all of which were designed, created, and adopted by the fire marshal under the Code of Regulations.
Yeah, and what I saw in the information, I appreciate the information you provided the board ahead of time.
Yes.
It allowed us to look at some of the safety things. And frankly, it's not the safety issues that concern me. I'm not terribly troubled by the concept of self-service gas stations, nor am I trying to do your job, but at the same time, I remember hearing what town meetings thinking was, and a lot of the information you provided had to do with safety, and I didn't see much as it related to. And so, for example, I can't tell the impact of the 1,000 square feet retail on existing establishments, and I can say that the only gas stations where I've seen that people need full service attention and get it in an appropriate amount of time are those that have 2 attendants. So I think the 2 attendants covers it.
I agree with you. And again, this is something that I think, that you develop in the bylaw by giving special permit authority to the Zoning Board of Appeals, which can place restrictions in a special permit. And so I don't know if that's perhaps one way of monitoring it. But again, this is not a matter as of right. And gas stations not as a matter of right. So, but again, when you go through that process, you at least have 2 boards reviewing it. Planning board, not so much, because they're going to be more concerned about how cars get in and out and where things are situated and where the drainage is captured. But the zoning board, which primarily deals with uses in the town of Milford, will certainly have the opportunity to impose conditions on it.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's the right relief. And to your memory is very correct, Mr. Buckley, but there was also another factor, and that was the number of small independent stations that were in Milford 20 years ago that could not put self-service in because they could not meet the economic requirements of the safety aspects. And that will be the case today. I'm assuming that there are stations in Milford that are smaller in nature still, and we all know which ones they are because we drive by them every day, that probably won't be able to take on the self-service because they might not be able to retrofit their pumps in an economic way. So I think that you're going to see a blend in the town of Milford.
And so the system or process that you've talked about is the one in which your client intends to employ, and that's a call button augmented by the ability to beep if somebody's,
Correct, because his store will be over 1,000 square feet.
right,
And so he's bound by that.
okay.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but I can tell you that the town of Bellingham enforces that regulation very strictly. Because we've had issues there where we've had an attendant leave because they were ill. And I've had to address it.
Yeah. Yeah, so, my concern is not with safety. I haven't read or seen or heard of any incidents where, there were gas station fires as a result of, people not experienced with the pumps pumping gas and causing a safety incident. That augmented by the codes that the state imposes in terms of safety. But I think we'd be well-suited in our recommendation to, make sure that, or ask that the ZBA and the planning board address the aspect of how elderly or how disabled people who aren't going to get out of their car are going to still get service, right? Because we know the gas stations, we know they're also trying to check in clients for vehicle service. So one attendant checking in vehicles, getting their keys, writing down the description of the problems, selling retail, cigarettes,
In some
sundries.
cases, beer and wine in some cases in
Yeah.
Milford.
How you do all that, make sure that somebody's not buying who's underage and do all that, and attend to the vehicle. And it may be one-off vehicles. I would expect that people that pull in there, the vast majority of them are gonna self-serve, and that's an inherently good thing. But I don't want to trade off, and I think ultimately it'd be town hall and for the folks, the individual that you represent and others that have shown an interest to address this issue.
And I think it may be something that, we grow into some kind of a regulation through the town. But there's nothing in the state or even in I checked with the American Disabilities Act, there's nothing in that really provides any strict compliance other than that you're supposed to have attendants on duty.
Yeah, and I've talked to folks who are disabled, and they've talked about processes where, outside of town, where they beep and beep and beep and can't get somebody to come out to pump their gas. And, that doesn't seem right, so maybe Milford could address it uniquely for those people.
I would think as Milford, we tend to do a good job
I
regulating.
agree with you.
But I will tell you, again, Mr. Buckley, I did some research on my own over the last couple of weeks so that I could walk in here and tell you unequivocally that every station I went to, they responded, and I can't tell you that.
Well, you can only represent how your client intends to run their
Right,
business.
Run their business, and I can tell you from my experience, but I did my own little bit of research over the last couple of weeks with some stations, and I saw some deficiencies.
Sure, and I think, it's time that town meeting, our legislative body, get an opportunity to see this.
With the new regulations in place.
And whatever the town decides to impose on special permits. Okay, that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Joe. I think you and Bill certainly hit a number of topics. I certainly don't have a problem remitting this to the planning board. I think it's time for that debate and discussion to take place. I certainly don't want to be hypocritical. Everywhere outside of Milford, I pump my own gas and always have. With that said, I don't think my mother has ever pumped her gas, and I don't see her starting now. So I think, we definitely have to keep that in mind, which you're doing and your client is doing, which I'm happy about. So, through the special permit process, this is going to be done one station at a time. And I think that's a way to address a lot of these things. It's obviously not going to be necessarily the position of this board that's going to have the oversight for that. But I do think that's something that, hopefully this board will take a stance on one way or the other, because I certainly don't want our seniors being charged a different price point than someone else who's more than capable of jumping out of their car, like myself, and fueling up their vehicle. So I'm pretty satisfied with that. I will say that this, you definitely got attention right off the bat. I've gotten text, emails, and phone calls already, mostly friendly, but some emotional, saying we don't do that in Milford. We have full service, and that's the way we want it to stay. Other people, and some of it's generational, some of it's not. I've actually there was across the spectrum. Well, Stephen, you can relate to this. We have we go to a barber shop in town that's very up to date on what's going on, and this has been a recent point of conversation as well. So I just think that it's just not
Those are our other
it's not our-
legislative bodies.
right, it's not our seniors saying one thing and our 22-year-old saying something different. It's really across the spectrum, and again, and I was a Newtown meeting member 20 years ago when that conversation started, and it was quite a lively debate.
It was.
About the self-service gas stations. And I don't think it'll be as lively, because I think it's just a matter of time where people think this is going to happen. But I just wanted to say publicly, even to, our ZBA members and our planning board members that might be watching, that, I think there's an opportunity for this to be, to appease your client, let him come into town and succeed, as well as they take this through the process. Just keeping those things in mind, and they're pretty thorough anyway. You know better than anyone that, as you said, they do a great job of regulating rules here in town. So I certainly support moving this on. I'm not sure how I'll vote on it as a town meeting member yet, but I think at this point the debate needs to happen, and it's time for that dialogue to take place.
And Mr. Chairman, one more thing. I just wanted to add that the board should recognize that the people charged with enforcing those zoning regulations are our building department. Once again, adding additional to those additional concern to anybody that says, hey, I just couldn't get service. As you said, you've seen it. I've seen the deficiencies in other towns, so, okay.
I think what's important, if I may, what's important, Attorney, is that people have to understand that the regulations that are put on self-service gas stations far surpass gas stations that are manned by attendants. And if you go into a self-service gas station, you look over your head, you look all around, you're far more safe. If something should ever happen, then, in the old days, as a young kid pumping gas in the gas station and something happened, you're far, as a consumer, you're far better off with a self-service gas station. Glad to see that, I have a concern. I have a concern as we talk about the elderly, we talk about people with disabilities. They need to be taken care of. I witness it firsthand every single day in Mendon. We do, in fact, have 2 attendants at all time in the store. And one attendant is responsible for the store, one attendant is responsible for the self-service gas island. They do a great job with it. I think it's time, to Will's point, I think it's time for the town of Milford to move forward. It's old school, it's, you go to the bank is all self-checkout. You go to the grocery store, it's all self-checkout. It's time to move forward and say, this is the wave of the future. This is where we're going. It's safe. Everybody's going to be okay. But we have to conform to the regulations. And I agree. I think we need to move it forward.
I'm the son of a pharmacist, and I grew up in the town of Milford when there were 8 drugstores. My father's store happened to be in Holliston, but it wasn't that far away, and the whole Bragville section of Milford used to go to his store in Holliston. And I can't imagine those 8 pharmacy owners ever considering that they'd have a drive-through.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, and you now cannot have a pharmacy without one.
without a drive-through.
Okay, the Walgreens and CVS's and Rite Aids of the world do not want to be in your location unless they can have a drive-through, and they'll move from their present location to get a drive-through. And again, so we talk about generational and changes. It hits home to me because I can't imagine any of those, and I worked in a few of those stores, and for my dad, can't imagine any of them ever considering that someone will be driving up to the back of their building and getting prescriptions out a window.
Yes, it's life, it's change. It's,
Wonder if they'll ever go to self-service.
Hopefully not. Thank you.
motion to.
Yeah,
close the
so,
town meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we're remand to planning for their review and establishment of town bylaws.
I'll second that.
And I would vote affirmative as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Joe,
Always,
thank you.
again, thank you.
Always
staff
good to
for
see
all
you.
their help in keeping me online to make a meeting. Thank you.
Have a good night, Joe.
Good night. Next scheduled appointment is Downtown Revitalization Committee. Come on up, gentlemen.
With guests. We'll sit in a second.
Oh, I'm,
Welcomed guests.
I'm sorry. And ma'am.
We'll sit on the end because you're more important than I am.
That's okay.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
Good
Hello,
evening.
everybody.
Welcome back.
As always.
Well, got some good things happening. We've got Mr. Chaplin and Mrs. DeWolf here to let us know what they're gonna offer to the town. We came up with an idea, the committee, to have somebody sponsor the bed across the street from Sacred Heart Church. And it's been a little bit of an eyesore for the last few years. We call it the gateway to downtown. The downtown, welcome to downtown sign is right there. Just noticed there's always, over time, there's weeds, and there's not much happening there for landscaping. So we came up with an idea of seeing if we can get somebody to sponsor that bed. So I met with Steve, and he went to bat with Mrs. DeWolf, and through the Rotary Club, and they were able to acquire funds from the, I don't know if it's the main regional
From our district.
district, yeah. And they can tell you more about it, but there's a good amount of funds that they're gonna come up with to buy shrubbery, which will completely landscape that. I mean, a thorough landscape, and they have an architectural plan drawn up. And what I said was the key thing is maintaining it. That's the real thing, is maintaining, mainly weeding. And if there's fertilizer involved or whatever throughout the whole season. So I asked them to go to bat to try to have it from springtime, April to November, having that look pristine, that one big bed. It's quite a long bed. And I think that will make a big difference for when you're entering downtown. It's just one extra good thing. In turn, they would like to put a sponsored by the Rotary Club sign, which makes sense. And I think there'll be a couple other types of sponsorships we were looking for in the future on this idea. And I think it takes, maybe just takes the, maybe the burden off of somebody in town to do that, but they'll assure that it's always looking pristine. Because weeding is, throughout downtown is a big thing. And there's not a lot of beds downtown, but this is one of the main ones. So we're starting off with this, and if I can turn the floor over to Steve or...
Sure. I just, Ronnie had approached me about this, thought it was a great idea. I'd obviously read in the paper about the efforts to improve some of the other aesthetics of the downtown area. So we actually, Donna was the one who did it. One of her clients is a professional landscape architect, landscape designer. So, basically we knew if we're going to do this, we got to do it right. You got to pick the right plants, you got to plant them in the right spots, you got to space them appropriately. I know for my own yard, it's important to pick stuff that you can't kill. And that's come in very helpful for anyone driven by my house. I'm not a great, landscaper by any stretch of the imagination. So basically, what happened here, we had the designer pick some colorful stuff, spaced it at appropriate variation, drew us a couple of different plans, priced it out for us, and basically we have this plan where we can plant stuff at the appropriate spacing, and basically 3 seasons of the year, it's going to look really good. There was a funding challenge to that, obviously, so I went to bat at the Rotary District. Our Rotary Club's part of a district, which, to give you a sense of how big that is, there's 6 districts between the Connecticut-New York state line and the very southern end of Canada, so it's a pretty large area there. And we were able to get double the amount that we've ever got before. So this project really received some high praise from the Rotary District leadership. And so at this point, we're basically ready to go. We're looking for a kind of flexible approval from the board insofar as, when you actually dig into the earth, sometimes plans change, but, basically we'd like an approval for, what we proposed with, some minor latitude to make it happen. And then the proposal, just to be very clear, would be that the Rotary Club would be responsible for the weeding. We would assemble a team of volunteers to do that throughout the year. There are some proposed plans, I don't want to represent that they're solidified just yet, but I'm hopeful they will be, to have a youth center component involved in the future, but that's that's preliminary at this point. But we could commit to the weeding and to any pruning or any, trimming of the hedges, but from the town, what we would need is there are some trees that are going to continue to be in existence in that bed, and I think we would need some help from the town Parks Department in terms of keeping those trees where they need to be. I mean, for the foreseeable future, we have someone in the Rotary Club who works for a tree company, but that's not. We want to make sure that the plan we put in place is something that's sustainable, for the, into the future, so that this is going to look good, it's going to pop, and it's always going to look good, and it's always going to pop, and it's not something that's going to fall by the wayside after a couple of years.
So all the plants that we've provided for the beds are really hardy varieties, so that they don't require a lot of fertilizer, that kind of stuff. It's everything that can withstand salt, sand, and everything that piles up in that corner over the course of a winter. And then just freshening it up in the spring, and that they should just be able to come back up and thrive in that environment. So the architect was really helpful in identifying what would be good in that area.
Another thing, I mentioned to Steve that maybe the town, when they're planting the actual plants, I think they want them to start in the fall. If we could have somebody representing the town there, maybe from the highway department, with maybe if they need a backhoe, not a backhoe, but maybe a bobcat or something, if they need equipment or need a little assistance, if they can be one or two people from the town for those few days while they're doing all these plantings, maybe have them part of it. That's one thing.
Sure, we could
that we'd
reach out
ask them.
to Scott and the Parks Department. I'm sure they'd be willing to help, or want to help.
And then there's just those maybe 6 to 8 flowering pear trees that are quite big, and they were pruned, I think, last year, but if the town can take care of the pruning of those as an ongoing, and then it's 100% done.
So I just want to be clear on camera, Steve, is that you made reference earlier to the Rotary was going to be responsible only for the weeding, and that's not what you're saying. What you're saying is that the Rotary is going to be responsible for plantings
Oh, yeah.
That is
in that
correct, yes.
island area. You'd like the town to be responsible for the existing trees that are there right now, and any assistance that we could provide to you.
That's exactly right. So I think I probably conflated two aspects of the project. The aspect that we're very confident in is the installation of these plantings. So
Okay.
what's there is pretty much going to stay there. That's going to be augmented. But once it's installed, then there is the sustaining effort to keep it looking good. And, trimming the hedges and the weeding, we're able to do that. But I wanted to be upfront with the board that taking care of those trees is going to be something that at some point is going to be beyond the capability of the Rotary Club. And we don't want to set ourselves in the town up for failure.
Mr. Buckley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this is a great thing coming from a great organization. And I want to say thank you for the hard work that you put into it, and the town, the work that Ron and his team have put together for downtown revitalization and reaching out to people. I don't have a concern with doing the work, and I don't have a concern with the approval of that work. My concern is exactly yours, and that's sustainability over time. And I'll illustrate it, I'll try to, and I'll put Rick on the spot. And I apologize in advance because I know I didn't talk to you about this, but here's an example. Who's responsible for the parking lot and maintenance of those beds on an ongoing basis?
Probably highway, you know.
Right, but I guess, right? Because we exist in silos with independently elected officials in different town parks. It's not a park, right? It's not the highway. And so what I'd like to go along with this is a sustainability plan, right? To make sure that your work is not in vain, that others that are doing the garden, the Greenleaf Garden Club has done a great deal. And frankly, I'd like to establish an expectation and challenge the various departments that are going to step up to help support it. And my challenge would be this: no weeds on Main Street, anywhere on Main Street, on any of the beds, any of the curbings, anywhere else. I know that's impossible to do town-wide on every road, but it should be an expectation of the taxpayers. It should be an expectation of its elected officials. That's an expectation I have. That doesn't mean that the existing system, processes, people can do that today. But we should look for a sustainability plan to follow right with this, not separately. Because my kids' kids will be talking about this if we don't decide how we're going to sustain an area of key focus in our community. It was chosen for a reason. It was chosen by the Downtown Revitalization Group. And every other year, it looks terrible. And that's because there's not a single point of contact and ownership for it. So I'd like to establish that. I'd like to find that out. I'd like to, if there are funds needed, in order to kick this off, what I would recommend is that we use the biomeasure TIF, which still has sufficient amount of funds. I know one of the things that Ronnie put in here was a help to defray the cost of the mulch. There's going to be a significant amount of mulch. I'm hoping that goes all the way down between the dental group and the Phenofield Park and the entrance to the trail. So if the Milford Rotary could help with that design services, we can help
I can ask.
with mulch and clearing,
I can ask.
and have it not stop there, but encompass everything around. Because that, if you've looked at the area between the dental group and that parking lot, we can do better, and we should do better. So I'd ask Rick to augment this. Should this vote go forward, I'm anticipating that it would. How could we refuse the generosity of the Milford Rotary? And look to establish with the FinCom, Parks Department, and Highway Department, specified ownership. When you have ownership, you have responsibility. When you have a responsibility, you have pride. And when you have pride, I have no doubt that whoever takes it over will do it in the right way and be responsible. But I don't want to see your effort look like what it does today now.
Bill, that's a great point, and I think that's something I wanted to propose in the near future to the board. It was brought to my attention about the city of Marlborough, and the mayor, just like what you said, Bill, said that he made an announcement that there will not be one weed in the Main Street downtown area of Marlborough. And somebody told me, you have to drive through it, you will not believe it, and there is not one weed in downtown Marlborough. But
And we have some that will dwarf the plants that you're going to put in.
no, it's true. No, so it's so night and day, and they don't quite have the right mix yet or anything down
Right.
in Marlborough like
They're
we don't.
getting there.
But if you drive through Marlborough Center on Main Street, you would say, this is a great town. Your perception would be there. But I found out that they actually have 4 dedicated people that take care of the weeding, I think, dressing all the flowers they have, just for that downtown district.
There's a
And
cost to it, for
I
sure.
think someday, I don't think that's a crazy idea to have a part-time person or 2 people from spring to fall. All they do is take care of weeding and maintaining what's there, and I think that will go a long way, because it's all about the maintenance.
It is. It's about sustaining, and it's about the maintenance.
So I don't know how that can come
That's my
aboard.
recommendation.
Well,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, and Ronnie, to that, I think that this is why when Bill mentioned, the different elected officials and the different fiefdoms, I mean, and the mayor of Marlborough is in charge of everything in that city, just like Marty Walsh is in Boston. When there's a mayor, everyone reports to that one person, and he or she can make pretty much whatever they want happen, or they change the personnel and find people who are like-minded and move forward. What we have to deal with is other independently elected officials that are responsible for different things. That's why I think maybe either we get the park commissioners and the highway surveyor invited to our next meeting, or one of us, Mr. Chairman, or you take it on as chairman, sit with those other folks and see if we can get a commitment, have a map, decide some ownership. I think if we overcomplicate this, it's going to take a lot more time.
Agreed.
One thing I will say, and I've said it every time they've come about Ronnie and the group, is they want results. They're moving quick. I know we got slowed down with those buildings on Central Street a little bit, but it already looks better. And I want to commend you on that, too. I hope we're going to talk about that, too, in a little bit tonight. Excuse me. But I think we just have to keep this, I get accused of steamrolling sometimes, but I think, we're here for a defined period of time. And I think if we want results, and that's what we run on and promise people, and I certainly don't want to sit here and collect dust. So I think that this is something, especially when we have people like the Rotary step up and do that, and I give your folks a lot of credit and all of you for coming up with this, but what I don't want, and we see too often, is there's a cog in government that just perpetually wants to slow things down. Someone didn't get asked their opinion, someone's feelings got hurt, whatever it is. None of that matters to me. We have folks here that are stepping up. You guys, you and Pete have put so much time in. We got to get Mitch on board. I mean, we have to keep moving forward. And I think by doing that, we start with getting the people that are going to be the owners of this around the table. Not a month from now, not 2 months from now. And I know I sound, it's not anger, it's just passion. So much of this stuff from when we started this group, I'm so excited about, because there are real results. We get distracted by all the silliness that goes on around us as well in politics, but we're making real differences here. And, getting right, not to, talk about conversations that we've had, but none of this, I don't know, whether things being in disrepair or looking worn, none of this happened overnight. This was allowed to happen over the last 30 years. I'm 42 years old. Some of the disrepair and the buildings that were boarded up and things like that, I don't remember it before then. And all I know is, with you guys and this group and going forward, we're talking about beautifying Main Street. We're talking about new facades. We're knocked down 2 out of our 3 buildings so far for parking. I mean, we are making change. And I know a lot of that isn't, sexy, but these are all the things we need to do first in order to get to the next level, which is when someone comes in and goes, you know what, next time there's a vacancy over there, I'm going to go pound on Ronnie's door because I want to put something over here, or I want to go here or there. And I think those are the things that, again, we keep talking about it. Whole generation gave up on their main streets to go to Natick Mall and Framingham and Shoppers World and all these places. People aren't doing that anymore. They want to actually come back. We now have another generation and a half that want to come back and shop locally. And I think, and just have a presence. And now I think a pride is coming back. And believe me, I'm part of the group that have cracked a few eggs to make an omelet, and that's the way it works sometimes. But I think we can get there. We need to, and I'm really excited about this. Whether it's the bed, but we got to get the owners around the table. And I don't want to be sitting here in 2 weeks at our next meeting asking where the highway surveyor is, where the park commissioners are, were they invited? Did you sit down with them, or did you ask one of us to? Because I'll volunteer for it, or have them here at a meeting. I just think either way, we have to figure out who owns what. I got someone, and I'll go by tonight because I've been away for the last couple weeks. But did the trees on Main Street get pruned?
Yeah, they did.
Because I got a call, and someone actually
did, yeah.
texted me
Yes, they did.
and said, while I was up north, saying that, Will, they came, they did. Again, people are noticing this stuff again. So if that was Scotty, I want to publicly say thank you.
That's tree warden.
If that was the tree warden
I
who
should have
did that?
reported that to you,
No,
yes.
I appreciate that. Please pass along that there was, there were people noticing and there were compliments. And I got to tell you, as I start my 4th year on the Board of Selectmen, it's the first time someone has called me, someone I know well too, to compliment the town on taking care of their trees on Main Street.
Yeah, that's good.
So again, the attention that, Ronnie, you and your group have brought to this, and now we have the Rotary on board, I mean, this is a big deal.
Starting to happen. Nothing's gonna happen in the perfect order, I see that, but over a 3 or 4 year period, you're gonna notice a difference. So we're working on, things as we speak, obviously, but,
No, you got a lot of coals in the fire.
yeah. But it's starting to come together, but not in the perfect order that you would want, but the eventual thing would be, beautifying, somehow getting more people to live downtown, and then as places come vacant, I'll be knocking on doors of great businesses to try to talk them into coming to Milford to get the right mix for a downtown. But that's all part of it.
Now, I know, this is the stuff they don't teach us in our civics classes, it's never a clear path, but I think we're getting there. I'm actually very proud of this board, I'm super proud of you guys, that you've wanted to step up and do this. Thank you, Stephen and Mrs. DeWolf, Donna. Thank you, Donna, because I think this is all what a lot of us have been jumping up and down about for years, going, when people, especially in my generation, are moving out or choosing to go elsewhere, and I don't want that.
And, sorry, Mr. Chairman, the other thing I wanted to add to what Will had just said is, the other thing that Ronnie brought to us is photographs of all the steel grates around the trees. Broken, I would call them safety hazards. If we could get that to be part of the discussion, I don't want to make this solving world hunger, but we're talking about trees and beds. And we're talking about it in our public ways. And we should have owners for them, so, my suggestion is to allow Rick to have the conversation and then report back to the chair and ask for any assistance from the chair that you may be able to provide, and then call a meeting. You're right, I don't want to wait. I don't want to wait any longer. We can talk about this. I know it was some pain, but town meeting, through its wisdom, funded a study where we got to look at other communities, benchmark other communities, and determine what they were doing well, what they weren't doing well, and what was our best path forward, both on the IDC and for the downtown improvement. So you're right, and we had something to do with it, but Ronnie's urging got the effort started in that committee. And so,
No question.
thank you.
I thank you for your efforts, and they don't go unnoticed. Rick and I have almost daily conversations now of the intersection of Route 85 and 16. It's absolutely deplorable.
Awful.
Absolutely deplorable. And my plan is I'm going to bring those owners in. I'm going to bring them in. So I thank you for what you're doing down there across the street from Sacred Heart, and taking the initiative to want to beautify the town of Milford. And my effort is going to be that intersection. It's unacceptable. I drive home every single night. There's a big white tractor trailer parked in there. The weeds are out of control. And I understand the property's for sale. I get it. I get it. You can't trim it. You can't plant a couple of flowers around it and make it more presentable so that somebody would want to buy it. So thank you for what you're doing. I can tell you this, as a board of selectmen, we support anything that you want to do, because you've taken an initiative, you've taken first steps to move forward in this community, to beautify this community, and it's a great community. It truly, truly is. But I also want to send a message that the people that aren't taking care of their property, we're on board with you, and it's unacceptable. And we're going to do what we have to do to move forward. So again, thank you for what you're doing.
So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion that we support the ad hoc committee's request, and specifically that of the Rotary Club. I'm going to make a recommendation that we not impede the efforts, but that the plannings use the good judgment with advisement from the town administrator, single point of contact, so that anything you need to do can be approved. The only thing I'd ask, Rick, because it's unknown at this time, the cost of the mulch, and whatever it is, it would come back to the board. I don't want to say it's pre-approved. I can't tell you what the vote is ahead of time. I can tell you, you hear commitment. I don't think mulch is going to be an issue. We have a fund that we can use. It's a biomeasure TIF, a legacy TIF from years past. And I think there's more than sufficient funds to help with your request, Ron, in your note to us about the pruning and the mulch. Now, if we need to, at your discretion, Rick, and I would say call in who you need. If you can't get ownership in the time frame they need to begin, I would say let's contract it. At least get this effort started. So I'm going to make a motion. Motion is very specifically, support the request of the ad hoc committee, support the request of the Milford, the Rotary Club, to help man that, and we'll provide the resources that we need. And Rick can be your point of contact. Rick, I don't know what the Board of Selectmen could add in terms of skill sets for landscaping beds. So I trust your judgment and that of the landscaping expert that you have.
I kill everything.
Yeah. I'm having enough time with my own yard. So that would be the support to the Rotary Club, the support to the ad hoc committee, and to have Rick go work with this group to find the funds for the mulch and the pruning if necessary. Lastly, to look for, I know this is a long
It's the
motion,
longest motion I've ever had to second. I'm still processing.
to look for ownership.
Congress.
To meet with the to meet with the various groups, to look for ownership and come back and let us know what the decision is. It may take our support at a FinCom meeting or somewhere if there's resources needed.
Bill, another, just that we did outline with the study that we did, we have an actual downtown district, and it's actually outlined. So that could be something that you could show them, that's the area they got to take care of. It's an actual area. Yeah.
That's the weed-free area and the plantings and the mulch.
Yeah, the complete downtown district area.
All right.
No, and I'll second that motion.
I hope Jeannie got it all.
And if she didn't, no one can blame her.
She's smiling.
Nobody can blame her.
And I would vote in favor of that as well.
Made a
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
We're
for all your
We're very
efforts.
excited to help.
Thank you so
We
much.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
You guys are sticking around for a second, right?
Yeah, we got a couple other things to talk about.
Oh, okay, good.
If we could, so,
Go ahead.
all right, so I've been sending some emails to you guys, I don't know if you.
No,
get
I
them,
caught up.
But I don't know the correct procedure, but as things come up with the committee and all, I feel I got to just keep you at least updated what we're thinking and what we're trying to do. And a couple things. We were so fortunate to get this $150,000 grant that's coming our way for the facades. So I've been talking to the, there's main properties that we see that are run down. I've talked recently again with the landlords to see if they want to be part of the program, and they're ready to go. But I remember how it happened 18 to 20 years ago with Sue Clark. We had an actual engineer or architect designer that came to see me with Sue. They had all the guidelines. The architect knew everything. That was the guidelines that they wanted to follow to be part of the program. So he would actually give us choices of types of awnings that fit the guidelines, the color paints, which were the historical colors, the type of lighting, which was more of a historical look. So to be part of the program, we had to follow the guidelines. Now, if we have an actual person that's not part of us, that's hired or subcontracted for each building to do this, it's going to make the process go a lot easier and smoother, where there's no questions on what's allowed, what's not, and it's going to give uniformity to downtown, and that's what we're trying to get. I lost my train of thought, but I don't know how that can happen. We talked about maybe taking the funds out of the $150,000 to put towards the architect or the engineer, and I feel that's going to really take away all the money that we need to put into these facades. There really is going to be a big difference once these handful of buildings get done, and I've got, the owners really want to be part of it. So, I think if we can go to bat, I don't know if you can sponsor an article at the town meeting that's coming up. If we can meet with the finance committee and make a presentation why we need this money. I don't know the procedure, but that's what we're looking to do, is to have a set amount of money put aside to pay the architect to use this $150,000 the best way. And I think it's the smartest thing we can do, and it'll make the whole process go a lot easier. And part of the, taking part of the program, they gotta follow the guidelines, but also they're gonna have to clean up the windows, and that's part of what we're gonna request, is, and that's sort of in the guidelines already. It's like 25% of the window can only be taken by writing or whatever. So we can take a lot of the hodgepodge out of these windows, and then find out what the tenant wants to say, with the landlord's help, and we can have a Signs Plus, write a uniform, get the message they want to put across, but have it more of a uniform look through downtown. And, the next thing would be having somebody that can govern that over time, so the maintenance is there for that part of the display windows, having a constant, good-looking display windows with not a lot of over advertised stuff in the windows. And that's part of what we're trying to do, too. But I think that we can work that right in with the architect, saying what he would like to see in the window, or what has to be taken out of the window. So that's, I think, a pretty important thing, to really use this money correctly and to have it go smoothly. Otherwise, if we don't have somebody that's in charge of saying yes or no to a certain awning or a sign, we're gonna have a lot of problems. It's gonna make it more difficult.
So Ronnie, to recap, what is your actual request?
Okay, I'm requesting, I guess, for the selectmen to sponsor an article at the town meeting, this October 15th.
October, yeah?
To ask to request money, which I'll go to bat to try to come up with the right amount of money over the next week to be determined, I guess. And so we'll have a ballpark, or a decent amount of, the right amount of money to ask for, the request the town meeting members to approve, where we can hire a subcontract, an architect designer that will look and understand the guidelines that we used before. I think we should follow the same ones. And that's already in place. Somebody in town has that. A town planner probably has that. And let him be the person that meets the landlords.
So that won't be that's not gonna be part of the 150?
No, I
You're
feel
looking for
I feel
additional.
it should be, I think this is where we could reach in for the town to come up with money to help give back to the landlords. Yeah, that's one request.
You go first, and then I have my...
Okay. Yeah, I think, so what's not been worked out, and that we have to work with our town council on, is how the funds get dispersed with an ad hoc committee. In what is almost a joint public-private partnership. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how it,
It was done, obviously. Sue
Yeah, yeah.
Clark probably would be able to answer all those questions, by the way, I would
Yeah.
think. So it might be a...
yeah, and so I think, much like the community preservation and the grants that were associated with that, we've got to figure out a vehicle by which to disperse taxpayer funds for the improvement of some of the conditions of awnings, signage, and display. I'm not sure how that's done. I'm not sure the mechanics of it, but we've got to get you and town council and Rick sitting together.
Yep, and I did work with them already. I sent a whole list of criteria for an application. That's them getting the ball rolling. They needed the criteria to create an application. That's the first step. So now we can get these applications in the landlord's hands. And we did meet with Charles and Rick to give us some advice on some of the criteria. I don't believe I sent that to you, but I think I will forward that to you guys so you can
Well,
look at
let's
the
let
criteria.
council and Rick respond.
Yeah.
Do you know how that
Yeah,
public-private
he
partnership?
did give us some proposed regulations that Charles and I will go through. We will put together an application. I think the difference with Sue is that she was a town employee, and we went through the CDBG.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't here then, but obviously,
Block
actually, I was
grants.
for part of it through the block grant. So there's got to be a way that we can do this, and we will find a way.
Yeah, sure.
To do that, whether it's.
Yeah, if we could just get clarity on how we're gonna do that in the mechanics.
our
We may
goal-
need an article sponsored specifically for that, I don't know, to have town meeting accept the utilization of those funds for that purpose, I'm not sure.
Well, and I think too, Bill, on that note, that between Charles and Rick, they can kind of help us with what we could get money for an article for and what they could use the $150,000 for, not to, hey, we're in Milford, everyone knows what a shell game is, but we can, you know, if there's a way that you can use this funds for some things and we can get a couple of warrants through. I mean, I still want to talk about, I mean, Mitch is here, I still want to talk about eventually getting money for a grant writer. However, that has to be written up because you're going to
the
make,
next thing.
that's another, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump
that's
ahead.
okay, no.
But I mean, we need that. I think there's 2 or 3 articles here that we're going to have to talk about going forward with, just whether or not, you know, X amount of money, whether the architect or anything go into the facade program or the landlords need to come out of the grant. So can we supplement whatever you use there with another article? I think that's where, because I know before Charles even started, Jerry was talking about, you know, some things you can do with taxpayer money, some things you can't. So remembering that, I think that, you know, between those 2 smart guys and yourselves, we can come up with, you know, an article that can make up for whatever needs to be spent maybe out of the grant. But I think we have to, again, there's a few, I think we should be ready for a couple articles. You know, and you never know, we're gonna have to defend them through FinCom and, you know, defend them at town meeting and justify them. But I think it should be a joint sponsorship between the Board of Selectmen and you folks. And let them know that, you know, let them know that we're working closely together. Town meeting members pay attention to all of this that are going on, so they're pretty educated themselves. But I think we really have to, whatever comes out of that meeting, I think, you know, that's when we got to take the next bite of the apple. And last year, I mean, when we even started with, again, on Central Street, we told them we were going to be coming back every year. Because this isn't something that's gonna go for 3 years, stop, and then we're gonna come back 30 years later, or 20 years later, because that's what we did this last time. And again, like I talked about before, this took a long time to get to where we are. It's not gonna get remedied overnight, but I think we have to keep moving.
Right, so we're working in parallel with the town attorney to define a process and set the priorities. How that gets allocated, that could be a warrant, but the important thing is that we looked at 2 methods for this architect. One was each individual business doing it on their own.
How do you get that uniformity
Right,
then?
right, and we think the cost, the time, and the delivery of the service would be better off served consolidated.
Great.
And we're asking to fund that.
Great. No, I agree with that wholeheartedly. I just want to make sure that if something's not possible, that we don't just, you know, quit and go on to something else. I mean,
figure a way of
I know you guys are pretty committed to this, so I'm not, you know, but I think we can figure out a way of figuring out how all this works.
Sorry. What I agree, Will, what I'd like to see you do is I'd like to see you work with the town administrator, I'd like to see you work with the town attorney. Come back to us with a defined plan. This is what we're looking to do, so that we, the 3 of us, the Board of Selectmen, have something to say. We're either in agreeance or we're not in agreeance with it, but, you know, tell us where you're going, you know? And so, you know, my recommendation as chairman would be work with Mr. Valani, work with the town attorney, you know, spend some time, come back to us, whether it's the next selectmen's meeting or this, you know, a month from now, come back to us and say, this is where we would like to be, and give us the opportunity to vote on that. That'd be my recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, for the benefit of this group and maybe the board, with the town meeting warrant closing on September 6th, we could put 2 placeholders for an amount to be determined and let them come back to us and not be time-bound other than town meeting, right? And give us sufficient time. So let me make a recommendation and see if it's okay. We can put placeholders in for warrants for both a grant writer and architectural fees associated with signage and awnings and window display. And we'll figure out through quotes that you get who might be interested and how they submit those, and then we'll be able to bound that with some dollar figure. And we can do that, if we're not ready in October, we can pass over. But it's not uncommon for warrant articles to be held for an amount to be determined, and it's not until town meeting, the night of town meeting, or shortly before that with the FinCom, that we're able to say what that dollar figure finally came in at and finalize the number.
I think that's great.
We can do that.
So what I'd like to do is make a motion that we give town administrative direction to submit 2 warrant articles for town meeting in October, one allowing for the grant writer for downtown improvement, another one allowing for the architectural fees associated with awnings, signage, and windows. And we'll finalize those dollar figures when we get that information. And we just hold them open.
And just so we're clear on that, you understand that, you know, we approve this tonight, it still has to go through town meeting.
Oh, yeah. And is that how does that work? Is that a 50%?
To be honest with you, you gotta sell it.
Yeah.
You gotta
Do we
sell
need to
it.
go in front of the finance committee to get their support?
As
And how
Will
do we-
said, you
how
gotta
do we
through the
get on-
process. You
Yeah,
gotta
and
go-
we can all walk you through
Yeah,
the
we'll help
process.
you, we'll be part of it.
And, you know, we'll contact the, as well, I mean, the chairman of the FinCom, let them know that, you know,
But to
he's gonna
Selectman
know that
Buckley's
this
point,
is.
we'll approve his motion tonight, but you still have to get it through town meeting.
No, I understand that. I do understand
First
that.
of all, I'm gonna second that motion, just so we don't walk out of here forgetting that. So I'm seconding the motion Bill made.
That was easier, I was shorter, right, Jeannie?
And I would vote unanimous as well.
Okay, and then, thank you, and then, I think with that, you guys figure out, you know, what you hopefully need over the next X amount of weeks for a ballpark, so we can finalize that, because then, you know, after September 6th, that's when the FinCom will invite you, put you on the agenda, and we'll go from there. And I do think it's very important that they're co-sponsored by both
I
the
agree.
Board of Selectmen and the Downtown Revitalization.
I agree.
So there'll be selectmen articles.
Is that a consensus? that
Yep.
Yes,
we're all-
absolutely.
okay. I just wanted
But you
to,
get your work cut
I
out.
need to record this, and so,
And no, it's not a 2/3, it's a P.
No, it's not.
no.
But I think you're gonna get a lot of support. I think people wanna see stuff like this. I know certain people are very vocal about it.
People want to take pride in their community. We have to give them the reasons sometimes and let them know where their tax dollars are being spent. This is as transparent as you get.
And all the hodgepodge stuff in the windows you took right away from me because, so I appreciate that, Ronnie.
Are we good?
No, great. Thank you for the support. This is,
Oh, one other thing that you did put in an email, though, I want to do a shout out to Celebrate Milford, Terry Vapacelli, and Joe
yes.
Soares.
Yeah.
They contributed 5,000?
yeah, they're.
Or
they're
made a
gonna-
commitment?
They made a commitment for 5,000 from Celebrate Milford. That's Terenzio Vapacelli and Joe Soares, and we met with them. And this has taken place over time, talking with Terenzio. I talked to him a couple times about his awnings, which they actually, at the Masons
At the
Lodge.
Masons Lodge, yep.
He actually controls their building, and there were so many rips in it, he couldn't wait for the program to be
No,
part of it.
they look
so-
good.
But, so he went ahead and did it, and,
Yep.
and he's very proactive with downtowns. He's the one that told me about Marlboro and what the mayor stated,
Mm-hmm.
and he told me you have to drive through Marlboro. And so they want to work together with us, or whoever else, they want to be part of making the decision where that $5,000 is spent.
Respect
And I would ask
Want to
them,
beautify downtown with something.
Yeah,
So
I-
we're going to work together on that.
yeah, I would ask
Maybe you
them,
can give them a couple options or something.
grant writer,
Yes, yeah.
How
helping
about
with
when they
that.
took the old awning down and the Brockton Shoe Company sign
Oh,
on the building?
was that- I didn't see
We should
that.
have taken that down and put it at Memorial Hall.
Yeah, I didn't see that, yeah.
Yeah, they covered it over again.
Yeah, right.
The old Brockton Shoe Company.
I didn't know
I
that.
wasn't around back then, but,
Yeah.
you know, so.
okay?
But again, thank you
Yeah.
very much for your efforts.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, guys.
Thank you, guys. Pete, good seeing you again.
Take care, Ronnie, thank you.
Okay.
All right, next agenda item is Town Administrator's Report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few items tonight. First of all, hopefully you'll notice, we're in the process of installing new tile floors and making improvements to the first floor bathrooms upstairs there at Town Hall. The flooring in the men's room has now been completed, and the work in the ladies' room will be completed next week. I want to commend Facilities Director Carlos Benjamin for overseeing this project. Just a further update on the LED streetlights, we are moving forward. We have 1,000 of them currently installed. It's about almost 60%, about 58% of the lights to be converted, and we are on track to complete this in October. The Human Resources Director, Maureen Giffen, began working today. As you know, she is the town's first Human Resources Director. At a future meeting with the board's permission, I would like to invite her in to both formally welcome her and discuss with the board her plans for the development of that department. Another project that we are pleased to report we have completed is a new fence in the back of the youth center that was installed this past week. We will be adding mulch to this area to help beautify it, and we're happy to report that. You kind of took the air out of my sails with the Central Street demolition, but the two properties, as you know, have been demolished. I do want to thank Town Engineer Mike Dean and Facilities Director Carlos Benjamin for their efforts in assisting with the project. Also, I think we really need to thank Highway Surveyor Scott Christofouli and his highway workers. They supplied and transported the structural fill required for the site. They are looking for some guidance from this board. They want to go ahead to either pave the area, loom and seed the area, or a combination of grass and pavement. So hopefully they'll be coming up with plans. If we're going to plant, obviously the time is dwindling for this year, so we want to get that done. But I want to thank them. The Highway Department, I think, came through very well for us. And then one final, I did receive an update from Representative Murray regarding the 3 earmarks, the downtown economic development earmark of $150,000, the Pheno Field pool renovation of $50,000, and the substance abuse outreach and intervention of $50,000. Both the downtown economic development and the Pheno Field pool renovation earmarks, you know, were vetoed by the governor, but successfully overridden in both the House and the Senate. The substance abuse outreach and intervention earmark was not vetoed. Therefore, it's all 3 earmarks are now approved. I want to especially thank Senator Fatman and Representative Murray for all their efforts on behalf of the town in getting those 3 earmarks passed for our benefit. That's all I have tonight, Mr. Chairman.
Great work, Rick. All the right things moving forward. Regarding the guidance in the parking area and where we demolished the buildings, there were initial drawings, conceptual drawings that were provided, and I know it included the 3 buildings.
Correct, yes.
Right?
Yes, yeah. They're right.
That showed a combination of parking and some green space. And I'm wondering if we could get those respun, because I think, with either regrind or just a base coat, we might be able to do something really quick to provide parking. But it's still important to me, and I'm not sure where this board is, on also providing some green space.
The pavement they could do quickly. Scotty
Yeah.
did mention that.
But green space is easy too, and if it's a 1-year or 2-year planting, I think it's a combination. I'm hoping that it's a combination. It depends where the board is, because we can pave everything, or we can pave some of it to provide for parking and put just a little bit of green space
I
there.
can have them put forth something for
Yeah.
everybody to look
You have a
at.
plan,
If
I
I
just
can-
wonder if we can cut it.
Yeah, when I came home yesterday, I went by there and I was very impressed with it. I think if nothing else, everything that's level should be paved. You have that embankment
do
going
have,
up that you can
unfortunately,
see
yeah.
mulch and green, some green, low bushes or something like that, or even a couple of trees. I don't think we want to go crazy
No,
depending on
it's
what that's going to look
sacrificial.
like when we end up going for the 3rd building, the largest building, but there's no reason to not utilize that. I mean, parking on Central Street is already tough. So I mean, that's what I envision. I think that's a good compromise of getting spots as well as some green space.
They did talk about some of the granite that they took out, they could make into like nice benches and kind of type, that's possible also.
great.
As part of the green space,
Yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, and if they want, I mean, if they'd rather have, lawn under the benches, then do that, but I think whatever they can come up with, that's also gonna be the least amount of maintenance, I think. Because again, that's what we talk about, but I think I don't think there's any reason to wait. I did have a conversation
I
with
agree.
Scott, and I know that he has the asphalt, he can
Yes,
get it
he's ready to
done
go.
very quickly. He made that abundantly clear. So I think we take advantage of that, and again, that's where again, different fiefdoms working together to, keeping their eye on the
Yeah,
prize.
he's
so-
definitely ready to go, no question.
So that'd be great.
Okay.
Grass seed and bark mulch don't cost a lot of money.
No, they don't.
Nope.
And we know, let's be honest with ourselves, we know we're gonna sacrifice some of that when they go in and bring heavy equipment in to take down the third building. So
Fortunately, yes,
it
but-
cannot be too elaborate. All we're trying to do is beautify for a short period of
Yeah.
time. What might be, Rick, we may be looking at 2 years from now before that ever happens.
Oh, I think we are.
And I think
It's
with
very
that,
profitable.
Well,
with
it's
that,
important
with that
is-
embankment up to the existing municipal lot, I mean, I don't see us ever bringing enough fill in, so you have to climb up to a parking lot. But you could have it easily, 5 or 6 stairs
Right.
going up to the other lot, or a ramp coming down, whatever meets all the ADA requirements. But there's a good amount of,
They need a railing for that drop off.
Well, I think what's important too is
do
not
something
only
like
to bring
that,
them
yeah,
down,
sure.
we brought the buildings down for safety. Now we have a responsibility to beautify the area.
Yeah,
Yep.
and keep them safe also,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Can we authorize Rick to approve a plan that gives us a combination of green and parking? We know
Absolutely.
that it's temporary, I just
Yeah.
don't want to gate this process from
No, I'd like
moving
to
forward.
get it moving if I could. Obviously, I'll
Absolutely.
get anything we propose to you quickly individually anyway.
You're gonna be the grand poobah of landscape
Yeah,
designs
and-
after
Hopefully
this.
it'll look like your front yard.
Come up and look at my house, please.
And every time I turn around, you're cutting your lawn.
Yeah, yeah.
on
Lots
that,
of it.
on that, oh, Bill, I'm sorry, did you make a motion, or did we just?
No, please.
Motion.
Oh, no, do we need a motion?
I think we're good.
I think, yeah, we got the direction.
Expenditures of town
Okay.
funds, but
Yeah, it's up to you.
But with that, with the building that we now own, that Mike Stone is still utilizing, I mean, the only thing now is those 2 buildings down, you see all the graffiti that's many, many years old on the side of the building. Can we either reach out to the Mass Department of Corrections here in Milford, or Sheriff Evangelitis' office? I know when I was on the school committee, we had a graffiti problem at Memorial, and the sheriff actually came down and sandblasted the building and got most of the graffiti off. So now that we're doing that, sorry, I'm moving right on to the next thing.
Yep.
Now I see all that graffiti, and I
saw that.
I'll deal with the boarded up windows in a couple of weeks or months, but the graffiti, I think, needs to go.
Okay.
It was fine before because it was blocked, unless you
Right,
got
now
squeezed
it's-
between the buildings.
Right, yeah.
Now people are gonna park their cars there, come down Central Street and see that whole side of the building if people haven't noticed it yet, so they will.
Okay. Sure.
And then we can figure out how to do that. I did have another question for Rick regarding a report. I know I'm a broken record, but with the LED lights, are we anywhere with Industrial Road and Commercial Way?
Yes, they're gonna be added to.
They are?
Yeah,
Thank you very
I'm
much,
just
because I
waiting-
just
I
know,
should
I
have
went up to,
mentioned that, I'm
you go
sorry.
through there and you see people
There's,
coming back from the brewery.
There's about
It is dark.
8 of them. I asked Mike Mancini to go to the area. He now just has to tell me, so I can tell National Grid the proper wattage and. so
Awesome.
we're
Yeah,
just
please do,
gonna-
and let us know when that's done. I really appreciate that.
And again, if the board, I assume, is okay with that, so I went ahead.
Yeah, and I'll make a motion if we have to.
I
just-
already authorized it, but I mean, it certainly.
Okay, no, I just want the support of the
Retrospective
board,
motion.
because
Yeah, sorry.
we've all been up there
Yeah.
for different charitable events, and when you leave that area, now again with
Too dark.
Amazon, hundreds and hundreds of cars come back.
There are a lot of
It's
cars.
dark.
I just don't want to miss the opportunity, because we want to finish this in October, and I have included that in the project.
All right, terrific. Thanks, Rick.
It's only 8, it's 8 additional.
Okay, perfect. Hey, 8 more than they have, so that's great.
Right.
Okay, old business, next agenda item, town engineer, multi-hazardous mitigation plan.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I might on this, as you know, we have been for the past 2 years putting together the multi-hazard mitigation plan. It has finally now been complete. MEMA has seen it, FEMA has reviewed it. We need to formalize the process with this board accepting or adopting, I should say, the plan. The town engineer has put together a certificate of adoption. I have the original here, copies in your packet. As you know, this is very important for the town to have this plan in place for a number of reasons, grant opportunities being one of them, and among others. So unless the board has any real questions and we need Mike back in, we'd be looking for this board to sign the certificate of adoption. And again, I have the original here in my packet.
With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the multi-hazard mitigation plan for the town of Milford, and to approve the certificate of adoption.
Seconded?
Required a certificate of adoption in the motion?
Yep, it's right here, yeah.
All right.
And I would vote unanimous as well.
And we need to sign.
If that's, if you could, yeah, it's,
Do you have any old business, Bill?
No, but I did want to follow up on something, Charles, I'm not sure. I'm going to delve way out of my territory. One of the ways in which I've seen communities collaborate publicly and private, with using public funds and private effort is district improvement financing. I'm not sure if that's been discussed as one of the options. It's,
No, it hasn't. I'm not familiar with it.
all right, so maybe an opportunity. You may read it and say, Bill, not the right vehicle. So, but district improvement financing is
Okay, yep.
one of the things that may help us along the way in that public-private partnership. And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, in old business.
It's the first time in a long time I don't have any old business.
Rick, I mentioned it earlier, this evening, to me, old business, Gibbs Gas Station,
Yep,
land across the street,
yep,
unacceptable.
okay.
You know, we had, Ronnie here tonight with his group. They're gonna do a beautiful job with the plots across the street from Sacred Heart Church. It's unacceptable to come into get off at Route 85 on 495, come into the first major intersection of the town of Milford, and it's it's to the point now where it's deplorable. Deplorable,
A lot across the street as you look across.
yeah.
The
both-
plaza, okay.
Both of them. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm glad you keep bringing that up, and you're keeping it alive. Do we know, or when is it going to get there's been questions of whether that's got a clean cert yet, right, from EPA or DEP?
Yes, I think it is predominantly clean. I'd have to,
Because again, not that I want to go through town like this, but I think Mike's right about bringing them in and seeing if we can have a conversation. But if things aren't going to change, I think we need to seriously consider taking that for open space.
Right.
Because, again, we talk about trees and grass and mulch and things of that nature. Again, we've made a commitment. If people aren't going to, be good property owners, then we have to get involved.
well, we sit here tonight with the group, and we talk about awnings uptown, and signage, and plants, and beds, and how they're trying to beautify the town, and then a major intersection downtown, just awful, awful.
My only caution to the board is that you have to be careful because you can't buy everything you don't like. And so we just talked and we struggled to identify who it is that owns the planting beds across from Sacred Heart Church.
Right.
We don't have an owner and a person responsible for it. So the question is, how do we prevent the town from taking ownership and having the exact same problem than us being bad stewards of public land?
Well, that would have to be part of the conversation.
So if it's not part of the
after we don't
conversation,
have it.
I would tell
have to
you,
meet the
I
owners.
definitely wouldn't want to do it. If
I
it's
agree, but
not
I think
part
at
of the
some
conversation.
point, that's what's so important, like we said earlier, about having the highway surveyor and having the parks department, knowing what they're capable of, knowing what they are with current staffing. Because like I've said before, and I always put the pressure on ourselves, I don't push it to anybody else. Either we get serious about this stuff
I
and
agree.
figure out remedies, or we stop complaining.
I agree.
And I might as well not even be on the board, because these are the things I want to see before I retire.
Right.
Right. Charles?
I just for information for the board, I've had a conversation within the past week with the town planner. He brought out, we talk about that intersection quite a bit. It was an intersection that I talked about at my interview. I don't think I mentioned it by specifics, but it was certainly what was in my mind. There was an engineering study and a plan that was done quite some time ago that would have done some roadway improvements, intersection improvements right at that site, and it would have required the town, in order to do those improvements, to take one of those two parcels that you're complaining of. I asked Mr. Durkin very, very specifically, and 2 or 3 times, if there was a problem. I know that there was a breached tank there at one point, there was some environmental contamination, there was some cleanup, et cetera. He tells me, he informs me and assures me that it is clean for all intents and purposes, and it's good. But if there were interest on the part of the Board of Selectmen, what could be done, based upon the engineering that's already been done, is that land could be taken, that intersection expanded, the corners rounded out so that tractor-trailer trucks could more efficiently navigate the turns. Because of the way it's constructed or designed in the plan, you couldn't have access to that old gas station site. The simple fact is that any entrance onto that site would be in conflict with the expanded intersection. It would create chaos there that you're trying to remedy by the taking. In any event, so I said, well, what would we do? We don't need that whole lot. What would we do with it? He said, well, possibly do a pocket park or something like that. I suppose another option might be, once the town had the funds and had done the traffic improvement, to offer it to the abutter if the abutter wanted it, et cetera. But in any event,
That makes sense.
there's already been,
And we talked about that, thank you, Charles, for reminding, 'cause we talked about that when I first got on the board, but it wasn't clean yet.
It wasn't clean. It
So
wasn't
if it's
certified
clean
by the
now
DEP.
and clean enough to
he
at
says,
least do
he
that.
says, right, and he says that it is.
Okay.
So, again, maybe it would be wise to get some sort of an update from him, and if it's something that's desirable, and it's a goal that the board would like to set, then maybe the next step is to, put it on the town warrant either now or in the spring and so forth.
We got to consider it for this
Obtain
town warrant,
funding.
but the only caution.
You'd have to do, excuse me, it would have to be obviously an adverse taking, the property's being marketed.
Yep.
I believe there've been some offers on it, so all of that has to come into play, but the bottom line is,
Getting offers for 5 years, so.
yes, and I think rejecting them. But the other thing is that, of course, there's an enhancement, not only in terms of the aesthetics, but also in terms of traffic safety of that intersection as a result.
But I'm going to say that the other thing, if I recall, I saw the plan. It was less than 100%, because it has to involve more land taking than just that gives. You cannot widen that intersection without impacting the second property, the one behind it. And you can't widen that intersection without impacting the gas station.
I was gonna say the Sunoco station.
The Sunoco station. So,
have to round up a
we
little
should,
But we have to look at it again.
we have
It's
to,
been 5 years.
let's open, well, no, this is.
Oh, no, I was on, yeah, that wasn't that long
Couple of years
ago.
ago.
A couple of years ago.
We should look at that plan, because it wasn't all there. It wasn't quite there yet.
Okay.
Might not have been to 100% design.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It needs to be laid out to 100% design, because otherwise, I worry about the risk of this creeping elegance, that over time, it grows and grows and grows, and you find out you needed, in order to get that street wide enough, you had to go past 4 properties and take.
Oh, yeah,
eminent
and
domain.
again, that all would have to be part of the conversation
Exactly.
before we moved on.
But
But
I
I think,
think-
again, we have to keep the conversation going.
I agree.
Yeah, I think the first message
one
we
we
need to
put
send to
that
the
plan
landowners is, it's unacceptable, the way your property looks. It's just, we understand it's for sale, it's for lease, whatever it is, it's unacceptable, you know? You don't-
I agree with that, and there is some cooperation going on between departments that might begin to address some of those issues, but again, it's just a matter of pushing so much through a funnel. There's only so much productivity we can create with the resources we have.
But one thing that Charles had said, which is again the concern of mine, I think it's a concern of all of ours, if they do sell it and something goes there, we're never gonna have an opportunity to improve that intersection. Anyone who comes off 85,
Or if we do, it's
tries
gonna
to
be
get
more
across
costly.
town, tries to go to Olivas, tries to do anything, and never mind people are cutting down to go past the Mackeys, past the vets to try to avoid the intersection, now you get a backlog over there too. And then you have stop all traffic with people trying to take a left on Hayward Street.
And you might.
So it is literally a bottleneck.
And you might want to get that project in the local tip and so forth, so that it advances, so that funding becomes available, because that's potentially a multi-year process in terms of getting the funding for the project and all the approvals too.
Okay.
Okay.
Good conversation, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, move on to new business. Town council and an easement.
If I may just approach for a moment, I'm going to give you a copy of the full-scale plan, just for convenience. I'm trying to figure out how I can do this so you can all see it. But in very short order, this is part of that transportation improvement plan for Route 16, and the impact that we have in particular. Well, let me just give you maybe a status update on it first of all, because I think that's important. So this project has a taking of something in the neighborhood 70 or 80 different easements. Some of them are permanent easements. Some of them are temporary construction easements. A temporary construction easement generally is going to last from the beginning of construction to the end, or 3 years, whichever is shorter. And we have prepared already letters to go out to property owners. Unfortunately, we rushed in July to get all of these letters done and all the paperwork prepared in order to put this on your agenda for late July or early August, only to have the state come back and say they're doing an additional environmental review. Hold up, there's nothing can be done until that environmental review is finished, and it is expected to be done this week. If that's the case, we are well suited to move ahead to put this on your agenda. We have to have 30 days notice, but put this on maybe for late September, early October, and then we can go forward with these takings. But the bulk of the paperwork that's necessary to take all of the takings has been at least prepared in a rough draft. However, there's one property that's owned by the town that is necessary for an easement. It's a temporary construction easement. It's that Fruit Street playground on the intersection of Main Street and Fruit Street.
Russell Franks.
It is identified on this plan as parcel TE 93. It's actually just a small bit of the frontage along Main Street that needs to be used. It's, again, a temporary taking. This will be taken during the construction. The purpose for the taking will be to do sidewalk improvements and to allow vehicles and so forth as needed during the construction period to go in. But it's quite a narrow, you know, five plus or so foot wide easement. This doesn't require the town to do a taking because we own it, but we just do need to do a grant of the easement, the temporary construction easement to the state. And obviously, this is just one parcel. It's not going to make the project happen any quicker, but if we don't give that easement, then it's going to delay or stop the project or require project redesign, something which we're certainly trying to avoid. We'd like to get this thing ready. It looks like it will be ready for permitting within the next couple of months, and presumably construction can start shortly after all the takings have been issued. But in any event, that's the site. It's just that playground site. I think there's a chain link fence there that would be removed and then replaced when the project is done. And all I'm looking for tonight is a favorable vote from the board to grant the easement to the state. Then what I will do is I'll finalize the document for the grant, and I can present it to the board. Oh, I guess has it already been submitted? So if you're in agreement, then all I need you to do is to execute the document after a vote, and we're good. I will tell you that Gerald Doherty, who is the project manager for MassDOT, has been in touch with me. He and I have some experience working on projects in the past, which is great. So we have a nice relationship. He called me this morning, asked if this had been approved, thinking it was sometime last week. And I told him it was tonight and I would get back to him. So in a nutshell, and without belaboring it any further, that's what I'm looking for the board to do so that the project can go forward. And if you have any questions, to the extent that I can answer them, I'm here to do that.
Mr. Chairman, with the explanation and the pictures and the available information we had prior to the meeting, I will go ahead and make a motion that we allow the state temporary easement on the town of Milford property, TE-93. It looks to be 5 to 10 feet of temporary easement on the Fruit Street playground, not impacting the playground whatsoever, but just giving relief off the sidewalk and the Main Street area.
I'll second that.
And I would vote unanimous as well.
And we have something to sign.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for the preparation, Charles. That helped a lot
You're
to,
welcome.
makes it go smoother.
Okay, next is Town Administrator, the Human Resources Director's salary.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you know, Maureen started today. Obviously, very excited to have her. I think she's a great addition. As you know, we need to set her salary under Article 2. I've provided to you the grade and step where she is at the present would be level 2, level 2, step 1. Obviously, my humble opinion, she should be paid accordingly. I did provide some information to the board on some area towns and some other towns as to what they pay their HR directors. I think if you look at that, their minimum is much greater than our minimum. So what I'd ask the board to do tonight is to consider making a recommendation to to the Personnel Board. I would then take that recommendation to their next meeting. I would bring Maureen with me. I don't want to belabor her resume, but obviously we were impressed with her through the interview process, as was I, as was the finance director. She's been a director of human resources for large corporations for a number of years, EMC, then turning into Dell. She has been an HR operations manager. She has a Master of Arts in Human Resource Management. She has a Bachelor of Science degree also. Again, I think she's a great addition here. I know she's excited to be here. So it's incumbent upon this board to make a recommendation that I can take to the Personnel Board. Obviously, once her final salary is established, it would be retroactive to her start date. I have explained that to her. She's aware of that. And that's what I'm looking for tonight from this board.
Rick, was there a specific number you were looking for, or is that just a
If you're asking
discussion
my
we're going to have
opinion, I will-
tonight?
I will give it. It is my opinion that I think no less than step 6, I keep getting, which is in the $78,000 range. I think she deserves to be towards the higher end than towards the lower end. Obviously, I'll defer to the board as to what they want to do, but I would not recommend, in my opinion, anything less than that.
No, and I appreciate that, Rick, because obviously going through a resume, 20 years' experience in all levels, from entry all the way to leading the group with Dell. I don't have a problem with that, but, you know, I do want to remind this board that this is what was turned into a political football, and quite honestly, still being a circus right now, that when this board made a recommendation of a salary. So I certainly want to just say that, and say that as aggressively as I just did, because I want that, you know, for nothing else, for the public to understand that you're asking us to make a recommendation, and that's what we're doing. So, based on your recommendation, I can certainly support that. I'm interested in what my colleagues have to say, but I do want to remind them that this is how the current circus began, and a recommendation from this board for an employee was turned into a political football. So I think we just have to acknowledge that in order to move on and do this again.
Well, I think I've had a conversation with Rick earlier today. In my opinion, you know, all of us have had the opportunities to have seen her credentials, which are worldly, is the way that I would put it. You know, I think that, to be honest with you, in my opinion, you know, level 2 is a little bit on the low end, but talking.
I agree with you.
Yep, talking to Rick and Rick's plan and what Rick has planned, I have faith in him and I agree with it, but, you know, I'm also cautious of how somebody with her credentials, we're looking to, you know, we're hiring the first human resources director in the town of Milford, and we bring him or her in too low, how long are they gonna stay? And we're asking them to fill a big set of shoes. They're gonna have to come in and take the personnel board and all the different departments and put them all together and say, this is where we're going. And I'm not saying that I'm disagreeing with you, Will. I'm not
Oh, no,
saying
this is
that
what I
at
was
all.
interested in. 'Cause
Right.
at the very least, I
You know,
appreciate what Rick said.
I think we need to step up to the plate as a board. I think we need to step up to the plate and say, this is what we need to pay this person. It's a new position. It's an important position. It's an office that's gonna have its door knocked on all day long by, as it should, by all the employees of this town. And I personally would, I would like to see us go right to, my opinion, step 8. Level 2, step 8.
I would agree with that, Mr. Chairman.
No, I'm very impressed, and I think that's it, because I'm not sure that, you know, again, Rick not having the authority and us not having the authority to hire over the level, step 1 of the level 2, until it goes to the personnel board. I will wholeheartedly support that. that salary range, or that starting salary, but again, it's just, we're making a recommendation.
Right.
We're the appointing authority, we're the HR director, and we're making a recommendation, as we did before, to an independently appointed board, so,
But we also need to give Rick direction, some instructions, some guidance.
I would like a motion,
Right, and,
I can take it there.
Oh, no, absolutely.
The other thing that is pretty compelling is the information that Rick provided to us, where he looks at actual salary of Belmont at 116, Drake at 84.3, Falmouth at 99, and North Andover at 90, Wakefield at 95. So we've got some benchmark information that shows even what we're asking for such a seasoned professional who's been doing this a very long time, has all the credentials. I think we've got a compelling case to be able to take to the Personnel Board. And this is as transparent as it gets when we're talking about, each of our meetings are recorded. Anything we say is provided to the public and available for years afterwards. When we make recommendations, Rick is our advocate. Rick goes there with his data and information and his benchmark information specifically of what other communities are paying. Part of the goal for this community, and more specifically for the Personnel Board, is to make wage recommendations that are commensurate with an overall policy that helps us attract and retain the brightest. I know there's a lot of data that goes into that, a lot of variables that go into that. So Rick has the information. Any questions they have, he can address, but Rick needed guidance. With that, I'd like to make a motion consistent with the chairs that we look for step 8 of level 2.
Okay. No, I'll wholeheartedly support that.
I would vote unanimous as well.
Okay.
And I think, but going forward as well, when we do this, I think we just have to keep in mind that, the tools and the variables, Bill, that you touch on, that the Personnel Board comes up with their levels and their salaries and what steps and things of that nature, part of the reason why it's a level 2 was because she's not supervising anyone. Well, the fact is, it might be a one-person, or in this case, a one-woman show, but she's building a whole department from the ground up. I mean, she's got, as Mike said, she's got the work cut out for her. So I think other variables need to be put into this kind of outdated, format that I think that we're still using. And, and I'm interested in hearing what the Personnel Board has to say at this point. So
Agreed.
I look forward to that. But, no, I think this, again, from a recommendation standpoint and a motion, is absolutely the right thing to do, so.
You have the latitude you need to go forward?
I think I do, yes.
And I think also, Rick, what's important for the general public to know is that one of her job sets is to educate our employees. And we talk about it all the time. We talk about the word sexual harassment, but she's gonna have to train all of our employees on proper behavior. And that's a big, the three of us, being in the private sector, deal with it every single day. And that's a lot of responsibility. So, you know what? It deserves it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Next is an application for a one-day license for Cafe Sorrento, 143 Central Street, Milford, Mass. Louis Chesky, all alcohol beverage, September 9th, 2018, which is a Sunday, from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. The parking lot at Bow Street for a clam bake. It's a non-profit. I don't have any other documentation to go with it.
Yeah, this is an annual event, almost a biannual event. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion. Mr. Motion.
I was like,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the nonprofit clam bake sponsored by the Cafe Sorrento for the Marine Building Fund to help our veterans. So again, it's an ongoing event. It's, as you said, Sunday the 9th from 1 to 6 p.m. Not a late event, and always does good things and serves great food.
I'll second that.
vote unanimous as well.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Motion.
Next is a one-day for St. Mary's of the Assumption, fundraiser for a retreat, St. Mary the Assumption, 17 Winter Street, Milford, Mass. St. Mary's Parish Hall, 8 p.m. to 12 a.m. Wine and malt, I'm sorry, I was looking for that. One-day application.
And this is for a fundraiser for a retreat.
Fundraiser for a
Happy to make a motion to support St. Mary's request for a one-day fundraiser and all malt and wine.
I'll second that.
I vote unanimous as well. Okay. Next is the Italian-American War Veterans, Post 40, 4 Hayward Street in Milford, all alcohol beverage, nonprofit, yes. Day of the event, September 8, 2018. It's at 4 Hayward Field in Milford, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Is this the, oh, no, I'm sorry, purpose of the event, Team Mickey Ward Charities.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to support that, approve that?
Yeah, I'll second that. Another great event.
And I would vote unanimous as well. And the next one is St.
There's two
Mary's,
there.
St. Mary's of the Assumption, 17 Winter Street. Father Peter Joyce, Saturday, October 20th, 2018, at the Parish Hall, and it's for the Oktoberfest.
This is the Molten beverage license. I'd make a motion to support this request and approve it.
I'll second that.
There's another one right behind it, Mike.
Yeah, there's two,
There's two, back to back.
Thank you.
Ooh. So that was for the 20th. The next one is for the 13th.
10:13.
So again, St. Mary's of the Assumption, wine and malt only, fundraiser for the church, St. Mary's Assumption. This one is for Father Mateos. The date is October 13, 2018, St. Mary's Parish Hall, 7 p.m. to 12 a.m.
And another fundraiser, so vote to approve the wine and malt license.
I'll second that. Father Joyce and Father Mateus are pretty busy.
And I would vote unanimous as well. Okay, next we have some correspondence.
We have a
Just the one
G7
add-on,
add-on.
Mr. Chairman, just Amy Leone and her event. This was an add-on that we received this morning, the International Overdose Awareness Day on August 31st. She's looking for a permit to obstruct. They're going to hand out information at her place of business, which is 12 Main Street. There will be cars stopped there also. And also, I think she's going to have some type of live entertainment, so she'd be looking for a live entertainment license too, yeah.
Motion to accept.
Yeah, motion to approve.
Seconded.
I vote unanimous as well.
Thank you.
And now, correspondence.
Yep.
What's this, Rick?
Oh, that goes with Amy's, that's the live entertainment.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. that-
Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Got it now.
Yeah.
So, first correspondence is from Jessica Lebrecht, Milford Cultural Council, resignation. To whom it may concern, I am stepping down from the Milford Cultural Council as of August 9th, 2018. Sincerely, Jessica Lebrecht.
Motion to accept?
I'll second it.
Vote affirmative as well. Rick, as always, make sure that we please get a letter of thank you out.
Okay.
And the next is from Lisa Becchiacchi, resignation from... This letter is to serve as a notice of resignation of my position as the clerk in the town, office of town clerk, and
There's things in here for passwords and stuff.
It's more informational for you, for you gentlemen, that's all.
Oh, okay,
You don't need to vote on it, it's just more informational.
okay, thank you very much.
That's all.
Otherwise, the password would become public information.
Yeah, no, that's all, yeah.
Okay, and we do have an executive session,
Yes, we do.
so I will take a vote to move into executive session before we close our existing session.
And for the purposes of?
Is town council for a existing claim and collective bargaining with the police.
Okay, with that, I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second that.
And I will vote unanimous as well. And now we have vote for executive session.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And with that, we will not be returning to regular session.
Chairman, could you